Hello, Spookies, and welcome to the Rick or Treat Horrorcast, hosted by yours ghoulie, Ricky J. Duarte. I'm back. It's been a whole month since the last episode. I had to move. I packed up my spooky little home and left Hell's Kitchen, and now I'm uptown in Hamilton Heights. I got a great new apartment. I'm living directly across the street from this massive, really cool cemetery. Literally, my front yard is now a graveyard. And I'm not going to say that was the selling point for me on this apartment, but it definitely had a lot to do with it. I love my new neighborhood. I'm in a much better living situation. For those that have followed the show, you know I've had some really big issues with the upstairs neighbors being squatters and dealing drugs. And turns out they were running like a stolen bicycle shop out of their apartment to cops all the time. So I'm very grateful and very excited to be in a much better location, living alone with my beautiful cat Renfield, who's still adjusting. And again, I got a graveyard right out front, so it's very me. But enough about me. I have a very special guest today. Our guest is a writer and an actor, a horror aficionado involved in the horror community, and a professional merman. Please welcome to the show, Chris O'Brockie.
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. I'm so glad we finally got to do this.
I am too. I'm so glad to be on the show. You are a very exciting guest to have. As I mentioned, you're quite involved in the horror community. You have acted in, written. Do you produce as well?
I just started getting into producing about a year ago on Killer Camp Out 2. That was my first time really doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and it's a bit stressful, but it's a learning experience. I look at everything as a learning experience. So yeah.
It's incredible. Why don't you give my listeners some history on you and your work in horror and talk about a couple of the movies that you've worked on?
Well, let's see here. So I guess if we really want to dive down in the backstory here, I was a child actor. I did a lot of stage productions when I was a kid, and then in high school I kind of sort of came back to it, and I was vice president of drama club, and then I started my first couple years of college, but I really wasn't really kind of unsure what I wanted to do, and I kind of made a deal with my family because they were helping me out with the college funds, because we all know how fun and exciting that is and how that catches up to you. But and I kind of told them, I was like, I really want to get into film and television. It's something I've always wanted to do. You guys know that. So I'll make a deal with you. Give me a year to get a foot in the door, and if I can't get that foot in the door and get a couple projects under my belt, then I will pursue something else. So, and sure enough, a couple months later, I landed my first role in the first Step Up movie with a then unknown Channing Tatum. So, so that was kind of like my start into the film and television business. But I started getting into horror. I mean, I've always been a big horror fanatic. I saw the original Halloween when I was 9 years old, and ever since then, the rest is history. But my first horror film was an indie movie from Lionsgate called Fear of Clowns 2. And just from then on, I just started doing a lot of indie work, and this is back in in auditioning days. Like, I found a lot of my auditions on Craigslist. I did not have an agent, and actually, I got some really good acting.
Sketchy. That is so sketchy.
Oh, it was totally sketchy. It was absolutely sketchy. But I got some really good advice my first couple years starting out from a very known and respected scream queen, and that was Miss Adrienne Barbeau. And I met her at an event, and I kind of really picked her brain. And I said to her, I was like, Adrienne, I'm just getting into film, and do you have any advice that you could give someone that's really new to the acting side of this genre and everything? And I quote, she said, well, this is exactly what I did when I was starting out. I didn't have an agent for a very long time. And she said, it may seem very arrogant, but it's going to get you a long way in the long run. Just don't do anything stupid and stay true to yourself, but promote the shit out of yourself. I'm sorry. Can I say that on here?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Um, yeah. So she said that. I was like, well, thank you very much. That was really to the point. And interesting thing is, I ran into her again um 2 years ago at a con, and I went up to her and I sort of refreshed her memory that we had this conversation a lot back in, I remember what year it was 2006. And I refreshed her memory, and then I was like, Adrian, I really took that advice you gave me, and I have always kept it in the back of my mind. And ever since you gave me that advice, I've been in over almost 40 productions since you gave me that advice that day. And she was just blown away by that. And yeah, it was a nice full circle moment. So that's kind of how I got my start in horror. I've done so many indie horror films, and I've had a very wide range of different kinds. Like I've done a zombie movie or two. I've done a vampire film. I've done a couple slashers, and now it's kind of come back full circle because my first horror film that I did was about killer clowns, and now I'm the killer clown in charge of all the other clowns in Shriek Show. So it's been a wild ride, and I'm a couple years away from celebrating my big 20th anniversary in film and television.
That's remarkable. It's so remarkable. It's such a hard industry to break
It
into.
really
The
is.
horror film community is really embracing though, and you've been
Yes.
able to work with some wonderful people. First off, that advice from Adrienne Barbeau, what an incredible woman she is. A
Uh,
friend of mine, Kevin Lane, his podcast Spill Your Guts, he's a friend of hers and interviewed her, and her story is remarkable. She got her start on Broadway in Fiddler on the
mhm.
Roof with Bette
Yeah.
Midler. Like, what? So, all right. So, you've done some incredible work, but you mentioned Shriek Show, which has a following, and you are that iconic clown. Go ahead and tell us about Shriek Show.
Okay. And oh gosh, it's been such a very long gestation process with Shriek Show. And honestly, it all started with a Halloween costume. My company that I work for, we had a Halloween party, and the theme, we did like a haunted circus theme. And I thought, how cool would it be to be a ringmaster clown? Because that's something that we really have not really seen hardly at all. I mean, you've sort of seen little bits and pieces here and there, but nothing like full on horror and everything. So I kind of I created this character, and one of the directors that I've worked with, Brad Twigg, who was the director for Shriek Show and Crackoon, when we get to talking about that in a little bit. Um, and he saw the photos of me, and he was like, I really like this. I would love to use this somehow. So, and then about a year later, I met up with him at this really creepy barn, and we just did a lot of promo shots of me and character and everything. And that was kind of, these shots were all kind of used to generate an Indiegogo. So then jump to maybe about 6 months later, we sort of filmed like a mock-up trailer and what we were going for. And unfortunately, at the time, we did not get a lot of people that donated to this thing. I mean, there's Indiegogos constantly going around all the time, so I get it that not you can't always donate to everyone. But so then we kind of just were like, you know what, I think this might have been a bust, so we'll take a break and we'll come back around to it another time. I was like, all right, that's fair. And then lo and behold, about a year later, I get a phone call from Brad, and in September, and he in September 2019. I remember this now. So he said, he was like, "So what's your schedule like for the next couple weeks?" I said, "Well, I mean, it's pretty open." And he was like, "Well, because we're going to start filming Shriek Show." I was like, "What?" And apparently we got a bunch of really last minute people that donated to the Indiegogo, and sure. And then we started rolling, and my first day on set and full makeup was, we shot at this haunt park, Markoff's Haunted Forest. It's here in Western Maryland. I could not have asked for a better location for this movie. It looked just so surreal, and everything was real there. And
It sets a tone. I mean,
yeah,
it's a great. I mean, the opening sequence is great. Obviously, an homage
yeah,
to Halloween 4, which is such an infamous opening sequence. But once you get into the woods and you get to the haunt itself,
yeah.
it's great. So that was a pre-existing set.
Yes,
That's
and
cool.
yes, the Halloween 4 tribute montage was completely all my idea. So, and the cool thing was, when the film was in post and we were doing color correction and all that, the guy who color corrected the opening sequence is a gigantic Halloween 4 fan. So, and
Perfect.
he was like, "I got you." And a nice little surprise. I remember when we had the premiere for the movie, Brad didn't tell me that he was going to use the actual Halloween font in the opening credits, and like my jaw just hit the floor when those credits popped up. But it was a really it well, we shot this movie during the height of the pandemic, so we had to do a lot of, we had to be cautious and everything. Everybody had masks on set. We had to do temp checks. And I tell you what, it's just everything out of our control was thrown at us, but we did not give up, and we got a really great film out of it. I'm very proud of it, and yeah, it was just, and I'm glad that now it was kind of a slow burn at first, but I'm very glad that now it's starting to get more of a little bit of a following, because that's all you can really ask for your film. And I hope that keeps going, because we would like to do a trilogy, actually, with the Ringmaster. So we're in the slow early stages of plotting Shriek Show 2, and let's just say the Ringmaster's going to be back in a very big and unexpected way. So
I
that's all
love
I can
that.
say about it.
It's the movie's a lot of fun. It feels like a fun house, right? Just like it's set in, which I think is really cool. Also, like you have some names in this film besides your own. Felissa Rose, Tuesday
Yes,
Night. We've got
yes,
Beverly Randolph. Like these are some horror icons.
exactly. They're definitely were our queens on a set, and I actually wrote all of Tuesday's scenes.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it like that was a very big surreal moment, because I wrote the third segment in the movie, the one about the scary clown. And when I wrote the character of Dr. Harris, and then when I found out that we had locked Tuesday Night in, and I was blown away, because Tuesday is, I'm sorry, but Tuesday is my Kristen Parker. I'm a big fan of Nightmare 4. I feel that, like, when it comes to the Nightmare sequels, it's like a very fine line with, you're either a big fan of 3 or you're a big fan of 4. So I'm
Sure.
on the 4 bandwagon, and just to have her, my Kristen, get to be in this movie. And I remember in between takes, she was asking me for direction, and you're like, "Chris, is this enough? Do you want me to give a little bit more? Am I a little too strong here?" And just to have this woman that I grew up watching, and it's this icon to me in the horror business, and it just blew me away.
What a
And then
moment.
when she got back to LA, she got the same car as me, and she sent me a message of her car, and she was like, she's like, "Kia buddies."
That's hilarious. No, that's
Yeah.
great. That's really great. You've formed some incredible relationships with some really amazing people.
Hmm.
Now, beyond Shriek Show, you are currently on set for a new film. Just so let me let my listeners know this is the first in a month of animal attack episodes that I'm doing on the show. And so you are on set for another animal attack movie. I mean, Cocaine Bear just came out. This is spawning, what is it, like Meth Gator and
Yeah.
a series of drug related animal attack films. Tell us a little bit about Crackcoon.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I know I jumped ahead there with that title drop earlier.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I think the title sells the movie. Like I just give me the title and I'm gonna watch this movie.
It's we everybody is so excited for this movie. Like the hype that we've had and the sharing and everything just around this. I think it's fantastic. And all right, so being on set, this time, one thing with Brad and his company Fuzzy Monkey Films is he likes to recycle a lot of the same actors. So, and I've been working with Brad for 10 years now, and and it's just I really loved our cast in this one. It was just everybody just matched up really well, and the chemistry between everybody and the choices of the casting, it was great. I play a gay drug dealer named Denny in this movie. It's going to be a blast of a movie. And I actually recently finally watched Bear. I watched on set. So, and we had like a little viewing party, and I was like, oh, this is what we're going for. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty psyched for it. So that should be being a theatrical release probably at the end of this year into early next year. So just keep an eye on it, guys. We will definitely let you know.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, there's certainly an interest in animal attack films, which was part of why I wanted to do this whole month of it. And I wanted to kind of select some films that get looked over a lot. The film we're talking about today has a fan base. It was a massive hit and people love this movie. I think that people forget that they love this movie. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to talk about Deep Blue Sea today from 1999. But Chris, I wanted you as the guest host specifically for this episode because you are a merman. Give us a little spiel about how you got started as a merman, your
Oh my
connection to the
God.
sea,
All right.
and you're celebrating 10 years now, correct?
Yeah, the Big Ten. Yeah, it kicked off in January. But let's dive on in for real this time. I discovered the community back in 2011, and it was so small then, and but I kind of accidentally stumbled on it. But the ocean has always been a gigantic part of my life. So, and I just was randomly online, and I saw this video of this beautiful woman and this like sequin tail, and she's swimming with humpback whales and everything, and this is like a fully functioning tail. And I grew up watching Splash, like that's one of my favorite movies, and I was just kind of like blown away by this. It was like, wait, this is like a thing. So I did my research a little bit more, and I discovered there was this whole community of people that did this, and some of them did this professionally. But one thing I noticed, and I've said this multiple times over the past decade, like when I noticed that there really weren't any mermen. I mean, there were a couple mermen here and there, but none of them were out there doing like the things that I thought could be done. Like with some of these mermaids, there were a couple mermaids that were considered sort of like A-listers in the business, and they still are. Mermaid Linden, she's a huge conservationist, and she has her own monofin line, and she's an incredible woman. And but I noticed, like I said, I noticed there were no mermen doing these things that these very powerful women were doing. And I was like, okay, well, I have a background in oceanography and marine biology. I have a background in acting and media marketing. So I'm going to take a chance here and see if I can become that public figure, become that leader for men in this business. And doesn't matter what how you identify, really. I just wanted to become a leader in this business and provide a safe space for people to not be afraid to do this and not be afraid to pursue their goals and things that they're passionate for. And I also wanted to do it to raise conservation, about the ocean. I grew up here on the Chesapeake Bay, so as you know, that's a very major water source and life habitat here in the states. And then I just it really was just a lot of really proving myself the first couple years of doing it. And but the support that I had was just overwhelming. And then here we are now, 10 years later. I'm still going strong. I've been featured on some major publications like ABC and CNN and Insider, and I have my own podcast in a way now. We're 2 years in now. It's called Merman Mondays, and it's been a very wild ride. I've gotten to travel to some great places and just meet so many incredible people. And I actually got my diver certification finally a couple years ago on my birthday. So it's all really come together in a very very welcoming and blessed light. Like I'm very grateful that I'm still here in such a unique business. And now the business is just blown up so much, and it's going to be even bigger now with the Little Mermaid coming out at the end of the month.
That is coming out. I am excited about it, but these live action Disney films always leave me wanting or disappointed. But I have to
Oh,
remind
I
myself
know.
they're not being made for me. These are made for children. And
Yeah.
it's I love Melissa McCarthy. Ursula is my favorite Disney villain, my favorite Disney character. I think she'll
Yeah.
do a wonderful job. She's a fucking great actress. Hello, like twice Oscar nominated. I mean,
Yes.
I have
I think she's
every
going to kill it.
I have every confidence in her. I have seen an illegal clip of Halle Bailey performing Part of Your World,
Yeah.
and it's fucking beautiful. She
It's
is
stunning.
stunning. The way it's filmed, it actually made me tear up at a point. I
Yeah,
have not,
same.
it's so I just think it's going to be a hell of a movie, and I can't wait to go see it. And I think it's going to do very well. They just announced there will be meet and greets in the parks where you can meet Ariel from the live action Little
Yeah,
Mermaid in the
I
parks,
did
which
see that
is
this week. Yeah,
so cool.
we talked about it on our show actually, on Monday. So, but I agree. I think it's going to be very big. It's going to bring a lot more traffic to the mermaids being in the mainstream.
Yeah. Well, I am impressed with you. You are someone who looks at something that you want to do and then you do it. And I think that's
Oh,
incredible. So,
thank you,
congratulations on all of your
thank
success.
you so much.
Yeah, can't wait to see Krakoon. But today we are talking about another animal attack movie. Again,
Yes.
as I mentioned, 1999's Deep Blue Sea. So let's go Rick or treating. Deep Blue Sea, directed by Rennie Harlan. So you mentioned how much you love Nightmare on Elm Street 4. This man directed Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
He sure did.
He also directed Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, the misunderstood and underappreciated Cutthroat Island, the pirate adventure
Oh
film with
yes.
Gina Davis, and The Long Kiss Goodnight with Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson.
I was hoping you would drop that one because I love Long Kiss Goodnight.
That movie bombed. It's so fucking good.
It is so good. It's one of Gina Davis's most best and most underrated roles.
It's a role that she was never offered before or after, right?
Yeah,
Just kind of hard ass, like really tough, like just action queen. Really, really
fantastic.
solid filmmaker.
Fantastic.
So this movie, he had a lot to prove because Cutthroat Island and Long Kiss Goodnight had bombed. His last hit was Cliffhanger, and that was a big deal. That movie was a hit.
Yeah.
1993, Sylvester Stallone. So in 1994, Duncan Kennedy wrote a screenplay for the film that we will be talking about. He was inspired, he's an Australian man, inspired by coming across the remains of a vicious shark attack on a beach by where he lived. So basically, a dead human body. And he said it haunted him, right? I think he quoted saying there wasn't much left of him. And he had these nightmares where he was stuck in like corridors with sharks and they could read his mind. And he couldn't get away from this thought. So that's where the birth of Deep Blue Sea came from. Now, the film was originally a lot more like the movie Aliens. It was going to be more military, more guns and grenades and kind of trained combat people fighting these intelligent sharks. and the writing changed hands a lot. Donna Powers and Wayne Powers contributed a lot to the screenplay, and in the end, the director and the writers decided to take it in more of a horror direction. They actually consider a lot of the influence to be horror. And I think that helps in this movie. I think it's a lot more interesting seeing, quote, normal people. They're scientists, they're brilliant, but seeing them running from these sharks as opposed to people with guns fighting them,
Yeah.
it works for me. There's a lot of things in this screenplay and in this movie that are atypical of what you would normally see in this kind of action adventure horror film, that we'll get into as we go along. Now, the movie was made on a budget of $60 million. Opening weekend, it placed third, and I think it only made about 19 million on its opening weekend. Do you know what movies came out that weekend as well?
Oh gosh, that was 1999.
Runaway Bride and Blair Witch Project beat this movie. Insane. Like, just think of summer of 99 was an insane year for movies. We also had The Mummy, and we had the remake of The Haunting.
Yeah.
So all in all, Deep Blue Sea made $160 million. That's insane. Huge hit. Really a big success. Over double its investment. I mean, a $60 million budget for a movie like this is madness. They wanted the most realistic looking sharks that they could possibly achieve. And I think for 1999, it probably looked really good. The animatronics in this movie look stellar, right?
Yeah, I fully agree. I still to this day, no shark movie has been able to ever top those animatronics in this movie. I think by far, sorry Jaws, love you, but Deep Blue Sea did it better on the sharks.
I mean, they were able to use Jaws as a template, right?
Yeah.
See what worked and what didn't. They also specifically, so the writer knew that he would be competing with Jaws without even trying, right? It's
right. I mean, that's what we get with every shark movie that comes out. Every single person has to compare it to Jaws because Jaws set that bar so high.
I just realized today, so Deep Blue Sea came out 24 years after Jaws, and Deep Blue Sea came out 24 years ago from now, which is crazy to think. We're getting old. But all right,
I don't like it.
Can I tell you a controversial secret about myself that I may lose some listeners over?
Please do.
I don't love the movie Jaws.
Hey, you know what? That's okay.
I recognize that it is a masterpiece. It's incredible performing. It's incredible acting, incredible suspense, wonderful directing. It's by all means a perfect film. I am just never like excited to sit down and watch Jaws. It's like how I feel about Beyonce. Wildly talented, nothing wrong. She's doing everything right. I am not excited to listen to her music, and that's
well,
fine.
You know what? If it makes you feel better, I will back you up on that. I prefer Jaws 2 over the first movie.
Hello, so much scarier. In a
There's
stupid
so
way.
much more happening. I mean, also maybe because I'm a sailor, so that's one thing that not a lot of people know about me. I've been sailing since I was 10 years old, so the whole sailboat thing, I'm 100% there. And it's just John Williams' score in Jaws 2 is so much bigger and better and adventurous, and he really kicked it out of the park with Jaws 2. And despite Roy Scheider not wanting to do Jaws 2, he's phenomenal as Brody in Jaws 2. I think his performance is even better because he has a lot riding on him because he was this big hero in the first movie, but then now when the hero is trying to warn everybody like there's another shark out here, nobody believes him and he gets kind of kicked to the curb. And it's just I love Jaws 2 so much more than the first movie. So I will die on that hill.
I'm going to be even more controversial and say I love Jaws 3 and I don't have to apologize for it. It takes place in a SeaWorld type amusement park and it was in 3D and it had Leah Thompson and is Dennis Quaid in that movie? I think Dennis Quaid, right?
Yeah, it was Dennis Quaid.
Yeah. It's not good. I'm not trying to say that it's a good movie.
Well, I think Jaws 3 is a very interesting concept. I think it's cool, but I think it just doesn't work as a Jaws movie.
No, not at all. That is the point where they should have broken away from the name Jaws and just started
Yeah,
making shark movies, right?
yeah,
And this
exactly.
month, I had thought about doing like maybe Piranha, but I wanted only one aquatic movie this month for animal attacks. Piranha is known as, I think Steven Spielberg called it the best of the Jaws knockoff movies that he ever saw.
Yeah, he did, and that
But
opened up the same summer as Jaws too. So
oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah, and it opened at sort of at the end of summer, I think, because the studio wanted to get away from the gargantuan release of Jaws 2. So and Piranha ended up being a big hit. So
Yeah.
good on the little fish movie that could.
Yeah. Well, and this Deep Blue Sea is actually before kind of the Sharknado craze, or
Yeah.
like that craze where it was Sharktopus,
Hmm.
or like shark, like snake versus shark. The every monster you can imagine becoming a shark or fighting a shark. There's like a ghost shark movie. I mean, it's
Yeah.
insane. So Deep Blue Sea is just, how do I describe this? It's it's a solid movie. Like the rest of those movies are trying to be silly. This one, I think, under in other hands, right? If it were handled differently, if it were cast differently, I think it probably would not have been a very good movie.
Yeah.
But it really works, and for clever reasons. I think it was cast specifically and very smartly so that you would not know who to expect to live or die. Our most famous actor, Samuel L. Jackson, I believe he was already Oscar nominated by this point, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Incredible. I'm just sitting there watching him, and listen, the dialogue in this movie is pretty silly. They give us such gems as beneath its glossy surface, a world of gliding monsters.
Gliding monsters.
Or you wait your whole life for a single moment, and then one day it's tomorrow. They keep saying these lines that you hear, and you're like, oh, wow, wait, what?
Why is that? Why is that in this movie?
Yeah. Yeah. You ate my bird is probably my favorite line in the whole film.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have Samuel L. Jackson as Russell Franklin, a bajillionaire who is also a survivor from an avalanche
Yes.
disaster. Saffron Burrows, who would go on to be she did Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and she was on Mozart in the Jungle. She's had a career. I believe she started as a model. So she plays Dr.
Yeah.
Susan
Hmm.
McAllister. And Thomas Jane. This was his breakout role. Holy shit, the prime of his life. Looks fucking incredible in his like sleeveless wetsuit top. Playing probably one of
Yeah.
the coolest roles in cinema history, a shark wrangler with a shady criminal past. We had Jacqueline McKenzie as Janice Higgins, a marine biologist. Michael Rappaport at the beginning of his film career. He'd
Yeah.
been doing a lot of stand up, but now he's transferred into film as Tom Scoggins. Stellan Skarsgård, Daddy Skarsgård as Jim Whitlock, scientist. I don't know what kind of scientist he is. And LL Cool J as Preacher. This was
Right. Yeah.
a year after H2, after
I would.
Halloween
That's
H2O.
exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah, and he basically plays the same character in both movies, but
Yeah.
he's really good at it. They actually initially Samuel L. Jackson was offered the role of Preacher, who is the cook on the research
Hmm.
facility in the ocean, and his management didn't want him playing the cook. And so they wanted Samuel L. Jackson so bad they wrote him a role, and thank God they did, because his big moment is one of, in my opinion, the best moments of its kind in horror history, because it's so surprising.
Exactly. Like nobody saw that coming.
It's pulling a psycho big
Uh
time.
huh.
Well, why don't we get into the plot of the film? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So the film starts, it opens on, is it four really hot young people who they're like late 90s hot, right?
They have
Think
their
like
late '90s tans and haircuts, and
they're
they're
so tan. They're so
hanging
tan.
out on this really rickety catamaran.
So, and that was giving me Jaws 2 vibes, right? From
Yeah.
this terrifying catamaran scene. I do think I like Jaws 2. I do like Jaws 2 more than Jaws. So they're hanging out, they're drinking, they're flirting. They're probably the worst people on earth. I would kill myself before I got stuck on a catamaran with
Oh,
with these
yeah.
hot, rich idiots. But one of them, there's like a rustling on the boat. Something bumps into it, and a little bit of wine spills into the water. Now, is is this? I understand it's supposed to look like blood, but it's not going
Yeah.
to smell like blood.
No, not at all. It's gonna smell like fruit.
So how is this rustling up the shark? You know what? Let me give this disclaimer, listeners. Don't ask questions when you watch this movie.
No.
Just sit
Just take it
down.
all with a grain of salt and an open mind.
Yeah, because that's the way you're going to enjoy it. The shark rustles again and it gets, bumping into it and gets louder, and one of the women falls into the ocean, and then it starts like kind of trying to break through the middle section of the catamaran.
Yeah.
And right when you think it's going to get the kids, Thomas Jane shoots it with a tranquilizer dart.
In this boat that just suddenly appeared off, a few yards away from the catamaran. Didn't hear the engine, nothing, there it is.
But he gets his great hero moment, right? Where he's like very self-satisfied. He really gives me Han Solo vibes in this
Mm-hmm.
movie for sure. He saves all the kids. I don't think none of them got eaten.
Yeah,
And
they made it.
we cut to a big rich person corporate tower in the sky, and a newspaper article says experimental shark escapes and attacks young people on a catamaran or something like that. And we meet Susan, who is our research doctor, who's
Yes,
heading all of
our
this
leading
research.
lady.
Now, all right, I think that she's actually a very interesting character. Saffron Burrows, at first I didn't like her performance, and the more because I watched this movie a few times this week to prepare, she grew on me. She is in 1999 coming from a place of being a woman in like a position of power, right?
Yes.
I don't know if she was written with the intention of people doubting her from the beginning, but I think that she had a sense, for someone who went from model to actor, I think that she put a lot more thought into her character than maybe she's given credit for.
I honestly, she actually, I mean, not that Thomas Jane isn't a delight to look at in this movie and has all of the super badass moments, but honestly, she actually is my favorite character in this whole movie. And I now that I'm older, because I recently lost my grandpa from dementia, so I can understand, like, connect with her character more. Like, they're later in the film, they all kind of turn against her when all the shit starts hitting the fan. And but now that I've experienced that loss, and I can understand, like, no, she's not a monster like these sharks are. She did this with the best intentions to save people. And so yeah, she's my favorite.
I think she was cinematically villainized. So she was turned into the villain of this film, I think, a little bit unfairly, because the research that she does is not what causes. I mean, uh, the whole it's kind of an accident. Like, she did not. One thing leads to another. I guess if she hadn't done the research that she does, you know what? I'm giving too much away. Samuel L. Jackson is the primary investor in her research, and
Yeah.
he sees this newspaper article and he's like, "Listen, lady, you got to pull the plug. People could have gotten killed." And she gives this great speech of, saying, "Have you ever seen someone with Alzheimer's deteriorate?" And she said she had to remind her father every day that her mother had passed away, and what a painful process that was for him to realize this day after day, and for her to watch it happen too. And so her plan is to cure Alzheimer's using protein compounds from sharks, because sharks do not get Alzheimer's, right? They are they're not completely immune to things like cancer, but they very seldom get it. They are, there's just, that's where she's coming from. So she asked Samuel L. Jackson, "Give me 3 days and your investments will skyrocket." And so he agrees, but he wants to see what the hell's going on. So they fly out on a big old helicopter to our research facility named
Aquatica.
Aquatica, which sounds like where Ariel's cousins live. They land. Samuel L. Jackson makes an obligatory fantasy island joke, which I guess he improvised. And we meet Janice, who is our marine biologist. Now, I read that the bulk of this movie was dubbed for obvious reasons, such as charging water, right? That you can't hear dialogue if the water is charging or whatever. But also, there was like a cricket infestation on the set when they built like practical sets, and so knowing that fact going back, first off, she is clearly dubbed in this moment. And her
Oh
dubbing,
yeah.
the delivery of her dubbed lines is pretty bad. But this research facility is in the middle of the ocean. It kind of looks like remnants from the movie Waterworld with Kevin Costner a little
Yes,
bit,
it does.
especially at the end of the movie when it's wrecked.
And I
And
love Waterworld, by the
okay,
way.
so do I, but I haven't seen it since I was a kid. We had it on VHS. I don't want to revisit it because I want to continue loving that movie. I don't want to look at it from an adult's eyes and
You're
start
gonna have
analyzing
to. No, just do it. Come
the
on. You
fact
gotta
that
do
he drinks his own urine because he
it.
puts it through a pump. Like, what? Moving on.
Yeah, there's that part. I was more invested in that boat.
Which also kind of looked like a catamaran. It was a
Yeah,
catamaran, right?
it was a trimaran actually, and they built two of them. But we're not going to get into the whole that because we're here to talk about Deep Blue Sea. That's a
I
whole other.
love that you know this.
Yeah,
So
no, that's a whole other pick my brain moment. So,
this aquatica, this research facility, picture like a square on top of the water in the ocean, and in the center is the cage where they keep the sharks, and then you've got various research facilities and like labs and stuff moving downward kind of in toward the center of this square. So everything is submerged underwater except for a watchtower up above. And we have met Janice, who is explaining people are going home for the weekend. We run on a skeleton crew over Saturdays and Sundays. And so it's just going to be bare bones over the weekend while we perform this very difficult, highly intricate test on our shark. Let's make sure we have as few people around as possible.
right, yeah, or not complicated thing at all. So yeah, we only need one or two. We'll be
While
fine.
there's a big old storm a brewing. Now, Thomas Jane has brought the shark back that was attacking people. And it has a license plate in its mouth, like stuck in its mouth. He does this really cool, like jump in the water with it and like he rides the shark. He grabs onto its fin. He's able to like kind of trick it to go one way so he can then like swing around and jump on its back.
Yeah.
It's absurd. It's absolutely ridiculous and the coolest job in the world. They actually filmed him swimming with live sharks, right?
Mm-hmm.
To contribute to the scene, but they had to wait until he had filmed all of the rest of his scenes with the implication that he could have gotten eaten by a shark. And they had to
Right.
have him in all the rest of the movie.
Good thing we saved it for last. Good
Some
planning there.
behind the scenes footage on YouTube where, you see him doing this and he is terrified. And they have like thrown chum into the ocean to attract these
God.
sharks. And the guy who's guiding it is like, these sharks will eat you. You have to be careful. They have razor sharp teeth and they will destroy you. And he did it and he survived. But I just think it's hilarious that they waited until the rest of the movie was filmed to do that. Regardless, he removes the license plate from this shark's mouth. And as an ode to Jaws, it's the exact same license plate that comes out of the belly of is it a tiger shark in Jaws?
It is a tiger shark, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same Louisiana plate. And he has his first run on with Samuel L. Jackson, and they don't get along. Thomas Jane is he's a dick to him for really, I guess if Samuel L. Jackson's the money, right?
Yeah, he's the rich suit.
Yeah, he indirectly calls him a fat seal.
Yeah, or a little fat seal.
Little fat seal talking about how that's what sharks are attracted to eating or something. I don't know. They have a really weird interaction. We also meet LL Cool J, who is Preacher, who is the cook. And he has a parrot for no reason. He has a pet parrot with a dirty, dirty mouth. It says things like, eat me, and
you have a big fat butt.
You have a big fat butt. And the bulk of his dialogue in this movie is just delivered to a fucking bird. It gets real weird when he feeds it whipped cream and then comments on how gross its tongue looks.
Yeah, a lot of random things in this movie, guys.
Yeah, so we also learned that he has a relationship with God where basically he just sasses God all day. And sometimes God responds by making something bad
Uh,
happen around him.
oh yeah,
But again, he's playing the same character that he played in Halloween H2O. He's just got a chef's coat on now.
yeah, yeah. That simple costume change, and guys, you got a whole other character there.
So we also meet the woman who works in the control tower, and she's really cool. I hate that she dies so early on and in such a
Yeah, because
terrible way.
I feel she would have been a fun character to have throughout this movie and
And
just kind of keep things
level-headed,
light.
right? Like she runs a control tower. She would be level-headed throughout this entire situation of like, this is what we need to do, guys. Everybody stay calm. Like she'd be the leader of the group. I firmly
Yeah,
believe that, which is probably why they killed her off so early, because she would have gotten everybody out faster.
probably had a very strong audition, so they were like, yeah, let's get rid of her.
Yeah. So
She's a threat.
day becomes night and they throw a giant party for Susan because it's her birthday. And there's like, Susan hears gunshots and then sees flares going up and she thinks it's an emergency. And then she runs outside and everyone says, surprise. And the
Yeah,
control tower woman's got like two flare guns in her hands. And it's, here's my thing. Two things. You threw the party after everybody left for the weekend. And you're going to get everybody drunk and then move on to the lab to perform this experiment?
yeah, because
It's the same night.
it's the same night.
Yes. So that's why shit went awry. Everybody's fucking hammered while they're drilling holes
Oh my
into the
God.
shark. We did see Susan. She has this like model shark where she
Yes.
can kind of practice experimenting on its brain. Part of its head comes off and the brain is exposed. And we get a little bit more of her backstory, giving us some empathy for where she's coming from with this, right? And I don't know. I don't think that she's the villain that people always like make her out to be. But maybe that'll change by the end of this discussion about the movie. So she has a little interaction with Thomas Jane, and he's like, "Listen, I don't love what's going on here, and I don't think that you could be doing all of this without me." And she basically threatens him and says, like, you have a history and I don't see you getting a job anywhere else, Buster. So you just
Yeah, she.
do what you're told. But she doesn't deliver these lines in like a villainous way. Behind the eyes, I just get this sense of like she's gonna do whatever it takes. That doesn't make it right. But like
Right, she
for
has
her,
that thirst.
yes, the means for her will justify the end of finding a cure for Alzheimer's. When I say she's not as villainous as people make her out to be, I'm not saying she's right. I'm just saying give her a little bit of credit here and there.
Yeah, that's
She's
fair.
also has to be the one who takes responsibility for what happens because it is her driving the ship. But so we have also met Samuel L. Jackson and LL Cool J get this little like one-on-one scene, and then that's their only dialogue together, where basically they both just agree that we are the only two black characters in this movie and then nod at each other and walk away. And that's it. Samuel L. Jackson is taken down to the lab, and Stellan Skarsgård is there, and they have to bring a shark up. So this is like a wet lab, right?
Yes.
Which is like it's underwater, and they have a giant, massive window that looks out to the tank where they keep the sharks. But there's a swimming pool in it as well. So it's like pressurized specifically so that there can be a swimming pool in this room that's underwater. I am not a science person, but I think that's cool. That's like
very cool.
Billionaire goals. I want a swimming pool underwater.
One thing I know about the set design for that specific room is I know I remember reading an interview with the set designer when they back in Fangoria, when this movie was before this movie was coming out, and they were saying how they didn't want the sets to look super like high tech and white and like rounded and everything, like something like you would see on like the Enterprise or anything. They wanted it to have just a very realistic feel, like a little bit of a gritty feel to it, and just something simple and not very advanced,
which I think is effective.
Yeah.
It looks lived in, right?
Yeah.
If you think of
Yeah.
Alien and that spacecraft and that
perfect
right,
example.
Yeah, it looks lived in. It looks like advanced technology that also looks a little used or old, or at least real, like achievable, you know?
Hmm.
Like this is something that I could see existing in the future, or in this case existing now. They have to get the shark. So Thomas Jane swims out. They have these like metal cage tunnels.
Yes,
They're like tunnels that go through the shark cages that are made out of like titanium caging, and they have a bunch of cameras out there. And they fed a shark to these sharks earlier, by the way. Like they
they
full
did.
on eat other sharks. We have three smart sharks, right? Two are first generation, a man and a woman, and then they had a second generation. They gave birth, basically.
Yes.
And to my understanding, that one is like the scariest one.
Yes, that's the oh gosh, what were their sizes? The two smaller ones were 25 feet in length, and the
20,
large.
they were 26 because Jaws was 25 feet. And so he
Oh,
tacked on
okay.
one
I
more
didn't know
foot.
that.
Yeah, one more foot just to be a little bit bigger. And then the
That's
the
funny.
final one is 46 feet.
Yes, that's right.
That's what Thomas Jane says at the end of the movie. I'm just gonna call him Thomas Jane the entire time.
Yeah, no, that's what we're gonna call him. We're not gonna call him Carter, which is his real character name.
So we see on cameras one by one the cameras going out, and then the lights go out there,
Right.
and they're like, what the hell is going on? And on the final remaining camera we see that they, from both sides of this tunnel, kind of swim inward toward Thomas Jane. And someone says, how long have they been synchronizing like this? And then Thomas Jane pulls out his tranquilizer gun, and the sharks back away, and everyone in the
Yeah.
lab freaks the fuck out, and they're like, hold on, what? And Samuel L. Jackson's like, hey, did they just recognize that gun? And then Janice goes, sharks can't swim backwards, it's impossible. Thomas Jane
Yeah.
thinks it's now a good idea, because all the lights have gone off, to swim out of this tunnel.
Yeah, it's just all kinds of great decisions in this.
He's removed his breathing mask because he uses it to distract the shark, and he swims out into the dark. The shark attacks his breathing apparatus. They can't get a hold of him. They can't see him on camera anymore. And he shoots the shark with the tranquilizer and ends up
Right.
like doing what he needed to do. Somehow, this massive shark, very heavy, gets loaded onto the like lifting bed that's going to bring it up into the wet lab swimming pool, right? How did he just like
Right. Did he guide it, this big, you know, massive ton animal over?
that's passed out, that's like sedated? I don't
Right.
know.
Because
Regardless,
it would have sunk.
it's like, think of like Frankenstein on the slab being lifted up into the sky. This shark is on a slab being lifted up into the wet lab. And now it is above the water, and they have it kind of tied down. And Thomas Jane is pouring buckets of water on it to keep it wet. I don't know. And, Stellan Skarsgård is keeping track of its stability. And Samuel L. Jackson asks Susan, what are you looking for here? And she says, lightning in a bottle. What? What? Whatever. So she takes this like mechanical, think of like a claw machine that you would get a stuffed animal out of a,
Yeah.
right? And it like attaches it to the top of the shark's head. And we get a series of needles from the claws that go inside of its brain and extract this brownish liquid. So they're taking the protein compound out of the shark's head.
Hmm.
This is all sciencey stuff that I think the film does a good job of allowing people to understand it without explaining what's happening.
I agree. The way they set it up and they film it, and just the exchange of dialogue, it's simplistic enough for you to follow if you're not a big like science nerd. So yeah,
And also completely unrealistic. And I don't think science
absolutely.
or brains work this way. She pulls this little piece of like what does she call it? It's basically a piece of brain from someone with Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
and just eye drops this protein compound onto the brain. Like just it just kind of drips on out of the needle like an eyedropper. Anyway, under a microscope that's hooked up to a computer, they can see that it actually works, and that starts firing synapses. And for like 5.6 seconds, the brain starts functioning at a, normally again, whatever
Yeah.
degenerative kind of phase it's at starts to lift. And so everyone starts celebrating. Samuel L. Jackson shakes her hand and says, "Congratulations." And holy cow, we just found the path to curing Alzheimer's. And that's the end of the movie. And the credits roll. And thank you so much for being my guest. I'm just kidding. That is not what happens. Stellan Skarsgård. Stellan Skarsgård kisses Janice, the marine
Yeah.
biologist. I like that we get a hint that they are in love with each other and that they're in a relationship, but it's not
Yeah.
like this is. I hate when they force romance into a movie. Like when Jurassic World came out, and there's just they start kissing each other when pterodactyls are attacking everybody.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't
No.
want it. So anyway, they do kiss here because it's celebratory, and I think it's appropriate. And then he lights a cigarette as a celebration. Now, again, I am not a science person, but if you were in a pressurized environment that is pumping oxygen into a room, do we think it's okay to light a cigarette?
Probably not.
Regardless, the biggest non smoking ad I've ever seen immediately happens because the shark wakes up and it chomps his arm off, the arm that's holding the cigarette. And
Right, which means the shark ate the cigarette too.
yes, exactly. It happens in slow motion, and yet everything happens so fast. Every possible thing that can go wrong does go wrong. Thomas Jane is knocked into the water. We have Stellan Skarsgård being dragged away. He's just gushing blood out of his missing arm. It like bites it off all the way up to the shoulder.
Yeah.
Like it's real bad.
Like in Soul Surfer.
They are trying to get him out. Thomas Jane runs or climbs out of the water and runs to get a gun, and he's going to kill the shark. And then Susan says, "No." And she dives for a random red button.
Yeah. It's just right there.
That like deploys the shark. It drops back down into the water. And he says, "Are you crazy?" And of course, like she doesn't. This is the moment, I think, where the blame lies on her. Because yes, you are in a bad situation. The shark should be killed. So maybe my opinion is changing a little bit.
Yeah.
Regardless, she sets the shark free. The radio control tower calls a helicopter, which immediately appears in the sky.
Right? It just that
flying through a massive, really bad storm.
Yeah, like tropical storm.
Yeah. So they're like in an elevator shaft, pulling him up to the surface. Susan says, "He's hemorrhaging." Yeah, his fucking arm was bitten off. Of course, he's gushing blood. He's hemorrhaging is the worst line in this movie. They attach him to a gurney, which is then attached to a cable that's hanging from the helicopter. And the woman in the control tower is telling them like what they need to do, and so they lift him up into the air and they start pulling the gurney up into the helicopter. The cable's like shortening, and then it gets stuck.
And poor Stellan has his arm reached out, like, yeah, like it's almost there, like, please get me, and yes, and then
his only remaining arm
yeah
up in the air.
Okay, we also backtrack for a moment about when they're in that elevator. Samuel L. Jackson has that line of Susan is like, "I'm not that kind of doctor," and he's like, "Just keep doing what you're doing."
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the tip. Hey, I will say, before Stellan loses his arm, Samuel says something like, "What in God's creation?" And Stellan says, "Not God's, ours."
Right, as the shark is coming into the moon pool.
Yeah. They also put like a breathing mask on Stellan's face, hooked up to oxygen, right? Because it's raining and wet, and
yeah,
that'll come to play in a little bit. But so the cable is stuck, and the helicopter is kind of bouncing in the air, and the radio control woman says, "Pull up, pull up." And before they're able to, the cable drops, and Stellan is dropped in his gurney down into the water. And for a minute, I thought the shark was going to jump up out of the water. Here's the thing. I hadn't seen this movie since it came out. We rented this movie. I know. Don't make that
wow.
face. So when we selected this to talk about, it was so embedded in my mind that this movie's fucking awesome that I was really hoping it would hold up. And it did.
Yeah, it still holds up. I watch it every summer, and just
it has such a high rewatchability factor.
Yes.
All right, so everything's happening at once. Stellan is now underwater in his gurney, attached to a helicopter by a cable that is stuck and won't move. Suddenly, that cable gets pulled tight, And you get the impression that the shark has Stellan, and it's dragging the helicopter, and the helicopter flies directly into the radio control tower, and our radio control tower woman unfortunately burns to death.
Brenda.
One explosion leads to another, and we have oxygen tanks and I'm assuming gas tanks perhaps going off. While all of this is happening, the gang is headed back downstairs to the moon lab, or to the wet lab with the moon pool, and we get this interesting shot of like looking up from underwater and seeing all of the fire in this. It's just a pretty shot, but this scene is batshit crazy
Yeah.
because they get down there, they can't get a hold of anybody, and then Samuel L. Jackson looks out the giant window and says, "Please, someone tell me what that is." And it turns out the shark has Stellan Skarsgård in its mouth in a gurney, and it's rushing real fast toward the window. Now, this reminded me of Jaws 3D. Also,
Yeah.
it's got to
Yeah.
be an homage, right?
It has to be.
The shark stops swimming, but like kind of tosses Stellan at the window, and he crashes into it, and like a big chunk of glass flies out and it starts cracking. I don't know if I can fully support that that was enough force to break that window, but I'm not going to argue it.
Yeah, you kind of can't do that with this movie. You can't.
They immediately realize we got to get the fuck out of here. So they start running. Now, something happened when they were filming this movie and they released the water without telling the actors. It was like an accident. So nobody was harnessed in, like on safety harnesses. They all got swept up by like 2 tons of rushing water. Samuel L. Jackson talked about it. He said we were just swept up like toward these cargo bays, and he says we all just kept acting, but everyone was really pissed off about it, clearly. But then he said he did laugh when he watched the movie and they kept that shot in the final cut. So
Oh, and can we also start like that scene with all the water coming in? That is the start of one of many scenes in this movie where Thomas Jane just is always falling. Nobody else is falling or slipping in water. It's just Thomas Jane. So
which
that scene is the kickoff of that.
he's the most adept at being in the water out of any of them. And he can't, like, he's wearing the wrong shoes that day or something. I
Yeah,
swear to you.
he didn't wear his non-slips.
Yeah, he's truly like a slip and slide. I would love to see a cut of this movie where it's got like the slipping sound every time he falls down. Regardless, now they've got to get out this door and lock it up behind them. And they cast people who look good wet. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like
Yeah,
everyone in this
that
movie
makes
looks good
complete
wet.
sense.
I don't look good wet. Some people do.
I do.
You do, Merman.
Sorry, I had to.
No. So they figure out in order to go up, we have to go down. They have like another wet lab that has a submarine vessel that they can escape in. So they have to go further down into the depths of this research facility. But the elevator shafts are busted. And Michael Rappaport is kind of the technician of the group. He has this line, I can't remember who he says it to, but he says, "Who are you going to trust?" And he says it like 2 more times in the movie. It's like they're trying to make it a thing and it's not a thing. Let's visit in with LL Cool J, right? Who is in a level, he's in like the kitchen level, like the service level. It's
Yeah,
it's below where the water
it's
just
below
exploded.
them. Yeah,
Yeah. So he's like walking along, talking to God, talking to his parrot, and water starts surfacing up. So he's like eventually chest deep in water. And he comes across a Playboy and just starts looking at his Playboy, and then a shark fin comes out of the water behind him. Now, I think the thing that I'm going to have to argue the most as being unbelievable in this movie is that he can walk faster in chest deep water than a shark can swim in.
yeah. But it did give us that very iconic scene of that fin flying down the hallway, and I love that shot so much, and the music is perfect, and it's
The
great.
score in this movie is good. There's some it's a horror score with some electronic, some
Yeah,
choral elements, like choral like voices, not choral like the ocean.
I mean it's appropriate.
It's effective. It's a really effective score. So he tricks the shark. He like goes into what are they called? Like saloon style doors to the kitchen, and the
Yeah.
shark goes the other way or something stupid like that. And he climbs up on like a giant shelf system where all these pots and pans are, and he grabs a frying pan, and his plan is to hit it over the head. I don't know. We do what we can. He's all the time clutching this massive cross that he wears around his neck as well. Shark gets into the kitchen. It knocks over the shelving system that he is on, and he falls into the water. As all of this is happening, it also eats the bird. I think right before the bird gets eaten, doesn't it say "eat me"?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says "eat me," and then it gets eaten. LL Cool J starts running from the shark again, faster than it can swim.
Yeah. And mind you, we can't see the shark, even though this water is crystal clear. And this is a 26-foot shark. I remembered. And this kitchen's not that big. Like the shark would have to swim and sorry, I'm just making this too technical now. It's the ocean nerd in me. I was like, why? Well, it wouldn't be doing that.
No, no, no. This is ridiculous. Which is it ridiculous? LL Cool J's rapper name in 30 Rock. Yes, he plays ridiculous. Anyway, LL Cool J crawls into an oven to hide. Now,
That's where you go.
this shark that just like it has just bust through like a steel door moments before, can't break the glass on this oven, but it can turn the oven on.
Yes.
And boy, oh boy, does it. And LL Cool J has this dumb line of it's such a clunky line, something like, "God, I understand the irony of a chef dying in his own oven, but not today." And he produces a hatchet. Where did he get the hatchet? I watched this movie looking for when he finds his hatchet, and I don't think you see it.
Yeah. No, you're right. Oh
I
my God. I've never noticed that or thought about that before. Oh, now I'm definitely gonna look for it.
He starts hitting the top of the oven with the hatchet. Now, here's another thing. You are in a chamber full of gas and you are scraping metal against metal.
Yeah, no, nothing dangerous about
Should have
that.
exploded
There's
instantly,
sparks.
right? Like, hello, sparks, instant explosion, whatever. He crawls into the top oven that's above his. And as the shark finally figures out that it can break the glass on the oven and kind of like goes into the oven and the oven floods, he jumps out of the top, runs across the room again super fast, and pulls out a Zippo and turns around, faces the shark, and says, "You ate
You
my
ate my
bird."
bird.
Tosses the Zippo across the room, and the shark, like, it's like the shark realizes what's going to happen, and it explodes into 1,000 pieces. And LL Cool J jumps out the door, and he gets burned a little bit, but he survives. What the fuck? First off, a soaking wet Zippo is not going to light.
No.
It's not. I own a Zippo, and they are not as resilient to the elements as they claim that they are. So we cut to the other group, and Susan lets everybody know that the way that they were experimenting on these sharks to get more protein compound wasn't working. So they enhanced the size of their brains, which in turn made them smarter. I don't know if the size of one's brain is relative to how smart it is, but in this film it is. So smart, in fact, that they know what cameras are, they know what lights are, they know what guns are. Like this shark, here's the thing about breaking the cameras. They have never seen what a camera does, right?
You're right.
They don't know what a camera does. So how can they know to break a camera? They have never sat at a computer screen and looked at the footage from a camera. It is what it
Ay.
is. It is
Yeah,
what it is.
it is what it is, guys.
So they reach a chamber where something about pressure, and when they open this door, the whole place is going to like, oh, wait, no, that's after, right? They make it to the other wet lab where the submarine thing is.
Yes, that's
And
right.
but it's damaged. And by damaged, I mean it's been turned on its side. I think they probably still could have gotten it to work.
But that thing really didn't look that big either. I mean, were they all gonna like it? Maybe like two people fit in it tops. I
Right,
mean,
because there's
were they
one,
gonna have like
two,
sit on each other's laps?
there's five of them at this point still,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
and
I
Samuel L.
guess.
Jackson, Thomas Jane, and Michael Rappaport are all big, over 6 foot dudes.
Yeah, they're big
So
guys. They're big guys. I mean, you do what you have to survive. So they feel like all hope is lost, right? Their only way is to swim. Samuel L. Jackson starts taking charge of the situation. And, he says the only way out is to swim. And hey, everybody, put on these wetsuits because guess what? That'll keep us from hypothermia. Like, we have to do what we're able to do to get out of this. When I was trapped in an avalanche, and then he starts telling the story about how, it took him 7 days to get out. And I don't remember when we started to turn on each other, but we made seven of us went down there and only 5 of us survived, or 5 and 3, something like that. And he's giving this monumental, beautiful, encouraging speech about survival and what it takes to get out alive. And it's kind of reminiscent of like the speech in Independence Day that the president gives. And right at the height of it, he says, first, we're gonna, and as soon as he a shark jumps out of the water and eats it.
pure
And it's
cinematic gold.
so good. It's so good. When we rented this movie, my mom rewound that part like 4 times. We could not believe
I
what
Oh my
happened.
god. I went to see this movie opening weekend and I was vacationing down in Ocean City, Maryland at the time. So packed theater. Let me tell you, when that scene happened, that theater went ape shit.
I'm sure. I
It was
cannot
great.
imagine. Yeah, it's great. Now, the CGI of it does not work. The
No,
animatronic parts of this film are great. The CGI moments are not great. They have
yeah,
not held up. I'm not going to try to
not
excuse
at
them,
all.
but they probably look good for the time. This moment is what sold Samuel L. Jackson. They wrote this whole new character for him after they, couldn't cast him as the cook, and he was told, like, listen, you're not going to make it through this movie, but everybody who sits down is going to think that you will. So when you get killed like 2/3 of the way through this movie, it will go down in history. And it absolutely has, in my
Yeah,
opinion, one of the most effective horror movie deaths of all time. It's so
so
good.
great.
So good. And everyone's reaction is, in my opinion, very appropriate. Like, it's not,
Yeah,
it's kind of like Frozen, a little bit. Like, they step back, their eyes get wide, but it's not like it doesn't, their reactions don't take away from what happens to Samuel L. Jackson. It's just kind of a what the fuck moment.
right. It's sort of like kind of how, like, I mean, it kind of mirrors how a lot of people reacted, when they saw this movie
Yeah.
in that moment. It's just like you're kind of speechless. Like you got to process it for a minute. Like, did that really just happen?
Yeah. And he's eaten in a way that there's no question if he's going to come back or not. Like, he's
Yeah,
done. He is
yeah. It's that
done.
next.
So yeah, the shark grabs and jumps out of the water, grabs him in its jaws, and then goes back down into the water. Like the upper half of its shark body drags him down in. And then the water fills with blood. This movie asks us to pretend like the human body contains more blood than it actually does on several occasions. For like, the human body has what, like 1.5 gallons of blood in it,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a lot of blood, and also not as much blood as this movie is telling us people bleed. So they can't go that way, and they can't use the submarine. So they have to try to open this door, but they know that as soon as they do, the like pressure change is going to cause all of the water from like the pool to flood the place. And so they have to
Right.
move
And I think
quickly.
it's already, well, they're already sort of on a time crunch anyway, because I mean, I think Susan says, or it's Michael Rappaport, yeah, we're just gonna call him that, his real name. Um like they say, like, after a certain amount of time, like the pressure is gonna cease in this room, and then sure enough, before they get that door open, it stops.
It does. It's like Old Faithful. It's like a giant geyser
Yeah.
that just gushes. So now the room is filling with water. So you're either going to drown or you're going to get eaten by a shark. They get this door open. The amount of time that Thomas Jane spends trying to open and close doors in this movie, like, no wonder his arms look as amazing as they do in
I
that
was
tank top.
just thinking that too.
Yeah, truly. I mean, there's a moment where he's riding the shark and it's like a close up of his back. It's very
It's
impressive.
it's real.
That might have been a stunt double at that point. I don't know when they switched him out with riding the shark or not. Regardless, he looks great. They open a door to an elevator shaft, and it's fire, like inferno, blazing inferno up at the top of the shaft, but it's filling with water at the bottom. And so they're climbing a ladder. Now, this is kind of a setup that we've seen a million times in movies, but they do something fucking cool with it that raises the stakes. They add a shark.
Yeah.
As the water starts to fill, it's kind of circling at the bottom as the water raises and rises toward them. Another explosion happens, and this causes the ladder to break. And it falls, the piece of ladder that they are on falls from one side of the shaft to the other and turns out to be the perfect size to catch. And now it's like a bridge over
Yeah.
the rising
Like
water.
monkey bars.
Monkey bars, exactly. And Janice, our marine biologist, falls in the water.
Oh, poor
Thomas
Janice.
Jane pulls some acrobat Cirque du Soleil shit and hangs himself upside down, and he's trying to reach for her. And she's screaming, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And this movie's just really good at building tension.
Yeah.
Now, a cut sequence earlier in the film was going to tell us that Janice was pregnant with Stellan Skarsgård's baby.
Yes, I do remember
Cut that out,
hearing
which
about that.
they cut it out because they didn't want to kill a pregnant woman on screen. But I think that makes her death all the more fucked up because Thomas Jane's reaching for her, like upside down, hanging down from these monkey bars, and then she goes under. And we get a few seconds of silence, and then she emerges from the water, erupts from the water up toward like where he can grab her by the torso, but
And
she's got a
and I think no, he doesn't get her. Like he like she slips through his fingers.
yeah, like he can almost get his arms around her, but she's got a fucking shark between her legs. She's like
Yeah,
straddling the mouth
of
of
all
a
places.
shark. It's really
Mako shark
upsetting.
teeth are really needle-like and like knives. So yeah, that of all places to be being bit by a shark for that. Yeah,
What a way to die. She's like straddling its mouth. And if you consider that originally the character was supposed to be pregnant and this is how she dies, where like it would essentially be eating the child first, like I can
yes,
understand why it was cut. It's a great death. Again, more blood than the human body contains. I'll take it. They're really sad about this, as you can imagine. Now the water has stopped rising. I guess whatever chamber that erupted, has now filled, and a pounding starts happening above them. Thomas Jane says something like the sharks must have flooded the level above us. So they expect a shark to emerge from above, which would have been pretty cool. Instead, we get LL Cool J,
woo,
who has opened a door and gives them a salute. And so he pulls them up and they have a moment to catch their breaths. They head to Janice's quarters.
Oh, my favorite scene in the
Talk
movie.
about it. Tell the story.
Oh my god. Oh, you want me? All right, you want me to take over? So we get to Janice's quarters, and as we see, it is insanely flooded and probably up about waist deep. So Janice has to go back in there, and because that's where the file is.
Susan has to go back.
I mean, yeah, right. We just killed Janice. Susan, and that's where the file is of all the research on everything she had been conducting on the sharks and the Alzheimer's and everything. It's in her locker. So she can't fully get her locker, but she's kind of like just fishing around in there with her hand. And behind her, we see some movement coming along, and we think it's one of the sharks, and it turns out to be that fake dummy shark that she had been experimenting on for a nice little big scare to the audience. And so it scares her, scares us, we take a breath of relief, but then we see at the far end of the room a fin rise out of the water very slowly.
And it's the real shark.
And it's the real shark.
So here's the thing. She like sealed her door before she went in. So was the shark already in there with her?
Right.
It must have been, right?
It had to have been.
Well, it charges at her. And she climbs up on a table, or like she gets behind like a bookshelf or something, and it bites the bookshelf. And essentially she makes her way up to like the top of a desk. And she takes off her wetsuit to stand on it. Now, is this when I was a kid, I thought it was because like rubber is like immune to electricity. What's it called? Like not a conductor.
Yeah,
But like wetsuits are not made of rubber,
and they're
right?
still wet.
And they're still wet. So is it for stability or is this just, are we just supposed to be stupid as audience member? Whatever. She's standing on top of her folded up wetsuit in
Also, her
her
body looked great.
white underwear, like white bra, white
Yeah,
killer panties. Like she looks fucking hot
yeah, she does.
for no reason.
No,
Like the wetsuit is still wet. So it's still gonna all right. So she pulls, she's also incredibly strong because she can pull an electrical cable out of the wall and shove it into the shark's mouth right before it jumps out of the water to get her. So is the wetsuit supposed to keep her from being electrocuted? I don't fucking know.
that's how I've been going with it since 1999. We'll just leave it there.
We'll leave it at that. Okay. Well, so second shark down. Also, her research material has been destroyed.
Yeah,
Here's what I have a problem with, right? And maybe that leads into the finale of the film and her, the choice that she makes at the end. But like it really does end up that all of this was for naught because now her research is gone.
yeah,
Regardless, she meets up with the other two and the other three, right? Because Michael Rappaport,
yeah,
LL Cool J, and Thomas Jane. And Rappaport says, if we can get a generator going, it will like pump all the water out of the other elevator and then we can get out that way. And so Thomas Jane and Thomas, again, he says, who are you going to trust? Who are you going to trust? And Thomas Jane says, you. So they go swimming and Thomas Jane comes across the floating corpse of Stellan Skarsgård and it scares him. It's a jump scare.
yes.
It's still strapped to his gurney. Real sad.
Poor
And
guy.
they're working on this generator and they work together and they are able to get it. But then a shark comes from behind and eats Michael Rappaport, bites him in half, and a CGI leg, like his bottom half, floats toward the camera and his leg is just twitching.
The Twitch.
The twitch. That might be the worst moment of CGI, I think, in the film.
Yeah.
Like, it does not look good. Thomas Jane goes back to the group. He's gotten the generator going, and everyone is real sad for him, right? Sad that Rappaport is gone. But like, nobody felt this sad when Janice died.
Well, I mean, they did take a few moments to, have a bit of a
Moments
grievance there.
after her death, Michael Rappaport is looking for her vibrator so he can find batteries. Like, he did not get the mourning that she deserved because she was a very kind, like she was obviously a nice, wonderful person.
I feel she was the most, I mean, obviously, other than our girl Brenda in the control tower, but she
Yeah.
was like the most grounded and nurturing and open-minded person that was in there.
Like had the best intentions for what was going on,
Yeah.
right? And probably maybe
And
didn't know.
tried to see the positive in everything.
I think it's only Susan and Stellan Skarsgård who know about the brain enlarging, right? They're the only two that knew about it. So
Yeah.
she didn't even know that was going on. She really has hopes for helping the world. Well, she had them anyway. All right, so Rappaport is dead. We are left with LL Cool J, Saffron Burrows, Thomas Jane. They just like the way that they're going to escape is taking air tanks and attaching flares to them. And their idea is that, and they know that it'll work because Thomas Jane used an air tank to distract the shark before. Sharks are attracted to charging water and color. They can't. LL Cool J suggests, why don't we just like have the air tanks propel us toward the surface? Thomas Jane says, no, your lungs will explode because of how pressure works on the lungs.
Which
I've never been
is
scuba
true.
diving,
You,
but
you
like,
have to decompress.
yeah, you like blow all the air out of your lungs on your way up, and you have to like go slowly, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to use these contraptions as decoys, and they do. So as their chamber is filling with water, LL Cool J grabs them by the hands, and they form a circle, and he starts saying this prayer, as I walk through the valley of shadow of death.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
he's leading them in prayer, and then he says, because I shall fear no evil because I carry a big stick and I'm the meanest motherfucker in the valley. Which is surprising that Samuel L. Jackson did not get to say motherfucker in this movie because
I
that's his
know. It
signature.
might be one of the very few movies where we don't get that from
I
him.
just realized this is in between Jurassic Park and before Snakes on a Plane. So
Yeah.
these were those. This is like the trifecta of his animal attack movies. Two of which I suppose he dies in. He survives Snakes on a Plane. I should talk about that movie sometime.
Ooh.
Anyway, all right. So the shark, the final remaining shark, does go after the decoys. They all make it to the surface. Thomas Jane and Saffron Burrows climb up onto the really destroyed Aquatica. Now it looks like a set piece from Waterworld.
Yes.
And Thomas Jane sees that it's sinking and he says, "Oh shit, I realize what these sharks have been doing. They've been hurting us because the bottom of the cage is titanium, but the top is just steel. So if the steel part's underwater, they can get out." And so, he says something like, what do
What's an 8,000 pound Mako think about?
freedom?"
Freedom, the deep blue sea, title drop.
Oh, that's why it's called Deep Blue Sea. Oh, because this does not take place in the deep, by the way. Susan realizes we have to kill her. Like she openly admits now, like this has to end. We cannot let this shark out because once it starts breeding with other sharks, humanity, like the world is fucked. The oceans. I
Yeah.
mean, actually, really consider the repercussions of that because that's going to change the ecosystem. They'll be like the smartest predators in the world.
Right. And the fact, I mean, they're also Mako sharks, and Mako sharks are the fastest shark in the ocean. So that makes it even worse, in addition to these gigantic, apparently smarter brains because they're bigger that Susan has created in these sharks.
Right. LL Cool J gets attacked and it's got him in its mouth, and so the shark is dragging him along and he grabs his cross from around his neck and rips it off and starts stabbing the shark in the head with this cross over and over and over again. He's going to town on it, and then he gets it in the eyeball, and it looks good. Like it's a good effect when he
Yeah.
gets it in the eye. And so it gets, it lets go of him. They drag him out of the water, and Thomas Jane is setting up this like bomb situation attached to a harpoon that like if you hit the wire against like an electrically charged some kind of battery, maybe I
Yeah.
think it
Looks
is.
like a car battery. Yeah.
Yeah, that it will explode. Where did this battery come from? He's like
Right.
MacGyvering this. They can't hit the shark. They can't get it. It's swimming too far away. It's like it's realized what they're trying to do to it.
Yes.
So Saffron Burrows realizes, like, I know how to get the shark back. Bait. And so she slices her arm open or her hand open and then jumps in the water, and the shark instantly smells it. Okay, here's the thing. Like, did she have to jump in, or could she have just
Held her hand
held
over
her
and
hand
just let
over
it
the
drip
water?
a bit. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I guess they're attracted to charging water, so if she jumps in, whatever. So shark's coming after her. Everything happens real fast. Thomas Jane is like, "No, you fool!" And then before he can shoot the shark, it fucking eats her.
I was so pissed in the
Bites
theater
her
when I
in
saw that.
two, and then so bites her like lower torso, and then her like upper torso is floating, and then it just swallows that too. And then it starts coming for Thomas Jane. And he does the thing he did at the beginning where he like fakes it out going one way, and then he grabs onto its fin and starts riding this insane shark. LL Cool J comes to and he sees the harpoon and he starts aiming for it, and he's like, I can't hit it, but he does. He fires the harpoon and it goes through the shark's fin, but then it also goes through Thomas Jane's leg. So now he
Yeah.
is like stuck, attached to this giant fucking shark that's about to explode. And the shark finds a hole in the fence and starts swimming towards it. Or it chews a hole, right? Does it chews a hole in?
I think she had been creating the hole in the process.
Okay.
So this
Right.
time now she just goes plowing right through it, gives no fucks, like this is it.
Which rips Thomas Jane off, like it rips the harpoon out of his leg, right? He grabs onto the fence,
Yeah.
and so it rips the harpoon out of his leg. So now he is no longer tethered to this shark, which it should be a really bad wound. Like that is ripping through muscle, probably breaking bone. But then when he's pulled out of the water, it just looks like a little gash. Like it looks like he just
Yeah.
needs some stitches, whatever. The shark is booking it out of there and right at the right moment hits the wire against the battery. And we get this massive explosion, like blood and guts 40 feet up into the air. And the third shark is destroyed. Thank God. The three sharks that die in this movie die the same ways that the three sharks died in Jaws 1, 2, and 3, by the way.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
Thomas Jane crawls out of the water, and he and LL Cool J are the only survivors. And suddenly, a boat starts coming toward them. It's the crew. They're back for the next shift. And they remark about that. There's a funny moment. Thomas Jane has his feet in the water, and LL Cool J says, "There were only three sharks. You're sure about that, right?" And Thomas Jane says, "Yeah." And then he pulls his feet out of the water, and LL Cool J says, "Take me back to the ghetto." Thomas Jane says, "Amen."
Amen. And then it cuts to the big, uh, deepest, bluest song that Cool J dropped for this movie.
My hat is
That is
like
like a
a
shark.
shark's fin.
We kid you not.
And the song took off.
It did.
The
It
song was
did.
a hit. Deepest, bluest. My hat is like a shark's fin. The words of a true poet. I will say, LL Cool J is the only person in the world who looks cool in a bucket hat. Everybody else who's trying to pull off bucket hats, stop it. You look silly. LL Cool J
Yeah.
is the only one who can pull it off.
Yep. I agree.
And that's Deep Blue Sea. Insanely satisfying movie, ridiculous, over the top, yet somehow works. Great performances from actors who were mostly unknown at the time, giving these kind of lifeless characters something to root for.
Yeah.
The original ending was to have Saffron Burrows, Dr. Susan, survive.
Yes.
And
Yes,
test
it was.
audiences hated it. They wanted her dead because she had started all of this. They saw her as the villain. I hold her responsible. I don't know that I find her villainous.
Yeah. No,
Maybe that's where I'm
I
settling
agree.
in my journey with where to place this with her. I don't think she's the villain, but she is responsible. So the original ending was going to have her and Thomas Jane kissing at the end. And
Yes.
again, I'm so glad it's not there. Like it's unnecessary. They have no I think
Well,
there's
right.
a moment where you realize they may have fucked, right?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, like
They have a past.
Janice and Stellan, you could tell they were a little thing. Like they were a cute little couple and everything. But yeah, I could get it that Carter and Susan definitely had banged, which is probably also why there's like that sexual, like aggressive tension with them throughout the movie. Like maybe they banged and then it just didn't work out, obviously.
But
So
I appreciate it that they hint at it and it's not explicit. And I
right.
appreciate that they don't start making out at the end because
Yeah, it just would have
it's
been so cliched and
yeah. I mean, the fact that she is killed 2 minutes before the end of the movie it's just unusual, you know? In this kind of movie, I just think it's surprising, it's unexpected. For some people, I guess satisfying. For other people, kind of like, damn it, because even like now her research is gone and now she is gone, right? Like anybody who had any sort of connection to how this process was done is gone
right.
forever. I fucking love this movie and I'm
I
so
did
glad it
too.
held up. Like, so glad. All right, here on Rick or Treat Horrorcast, we have a rating system. A movie is either a trick, which means it's okay, it's a treat, which means you loved it, or it's a smell my feet, which means it sucked. Chris, Merman Christian, how would you rate Deep Blue Sea?
Oh, it is an absolute treat.
Yeah, same. I went into this thinking I might categorize it as a trick, and it's a treat. Again, such rewatchability. It's just I don't. It's just so batshit crazy. It's a very satisfying action movie that has clear nods to Alien and
Yeah.
Aliens. It's it's kind of like Jaws mixed with Alien, and there's something really satisfying in that it doesn't take itself 100% seriously. It's still
Right.
it's playful at times, right? But
And this came out the same summer as Lake Placid.
oh, did it really?
It did, yeah.
Wow, I feel like Lake Placid might have done a little bit better, maybe.
But
I don't
it
know.
I don't know. Like, we're gonna have to look at that. I'm
I'm gonna
curious
look
now.
right now.
I know that this movie I know Lake Placid definitely got overshadowed by this movie.
Oh, this movie did much better than
Ah,
the
that's what I
yeah,
thought.
Lake Placid only brought in 56 million, 56.9. This movie was a big deal when it came out, and I do think over the years it was forgotten, but I do hear it popping up in conversation from time to time now. So I think it's well, all right. It spawned two sequels in the last like three
Oh
years.
yes.
I haven't seen either of them, but you have.
I own them actually.
Oh,
All right, I will not go into a whole big thing about both of them. But I will say here. Well, here's how I'll start off the sequel talk. Obviously, this was such a big, massive hit. I remember at the time, not long after this movie came out, I remember, excuse me, reading online that they were plotting a sequel, and it was going to be called Deep Red Sea, and they were going to bring back LL Cool J and the new prep. And I swear to God, I remember reading this online back in the day on one of, I think maybe it was like Dark Horizons or something on their website back when that was a big thing. And it was going to be called that. And now there were apparently other sharks that were being tested in like another facility nearby Aquatica, sort of like a sister facility.
like
And
Isla
there was,
Nublar in
yeah,
Jurassic Park.
yeah, exactly. So, and there was going to be an earthquake, and there was this new high rise hotel on the edge of the water, and this earthquake was going to happen, and the hotel was going to tip sideways into like the surf and flood, and that's how the new sharks were going to get in.
So are they inside the high rise that's now on its side?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. I
Yeah,
would totally
actually,
watch
I
that movie.
actually thought that was a really cool idea.
Well, it's cooler than what they came up with for the actual Deep Blue Sea 2.
Yeah, Deep Blue Sea 2 is actually just very cheaply done remake of the first movie.
Yeah.
All,
Yeah.
and this time they use bull sharks. And the only thing I will give Deep Blue Sea 2 is the fact that they did go with a different shark species. And also there's a couple scenes where when things are flooding and they're going in the corridors, and each corridor has a different lighting scheme. One is red, one is green, one is blue, and which ironically are the lighting schemes of the first three Alien movies.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that was intentional, but God bless them if it was. But I mean, but then the movie like it takes this radical turn. I mean, it's already cheaply done anyway, and you don't give a shit about any of these characters. And they do, however, do reference the first movie in this, which was good. So this movie happened in 2018 and everybody fucking hated it. And they were like, wow, you had 20 years to make a good sequel to this movie.
Right.
And this is the garbage that you give us. So that being said, obviously they learned from their mistake. And then came the very unexpected gem that was Deep Blue Sea 3, which actually Deep Blue Sea 3 has a higher rating on Rotten Tomatoes than the first movie.
I've heard it. People really liked it.
I absolutely loved it, and it kind of took the DNA of the first movie, but it brings it to the surface this time. Now it's a research facility called Little Happy, and but global warming is causing ocean rising temperatures to so now it's all starting to flood. And they use bull sharks again, and I mean the whole movie just has a whole environmental message to it too, which I thought was very smart and a good thing to throw in there because that's just where we are right now in the world. And yeah, it was a very, I mean, some of the CGI, obviously, it didn't have the budget that the first movie did, but I mean, for what it was, it's a great time. And I definitely say it is indeed a treat.
I'll check it out. Do I have to have watched part two to watch part three?
You know, not, I mean, part three is a sequel to two, but I mean, honestly, you really don't have to because part three references two enough that you're like, okay, I get it. This happened before, and it also actually throws in there nods to the first, mentions the first one too.
You know what? I'm a completionist. I'm just gonna watch. I'm gonna watch two and three.
Just do it, and then.
Oh man. Well, I thank you for kicking off Animal Attack Month with me
You are
on
so welcome.
on this hell of a movie. You were an incredible guest host.
Oh, thank you.
Where can my listeners stalk you?
Well, you guys can currently stalk me on you guys can stalk me on Instagram under hashtag or yeah, under Merman underscore Christian. You can watch me every other Monday on my own show, Merman Mondays with my co-host, and you can catch me in a lot of streaming online right now. A lot of my movies have just dropped on Tubi, Freak Show being one of them.
Congratulations.
And yeah, that's where I'm floating about in the deep blue sea.
Amazing. You're such a cool presence to follow on the social medias.
Oh,
Listeners,
thank
you can follow the show at Rick or Treat Pod on Instagram. I have a website now. My very good friend Evelyn DeVere has designed it for me. It's rickortreat.com. You can send me emails directly from the website or at my email address, ricky@rickortreat.com. The website has links to my writing for Rue Morgue and spoiler-free reviews, and it has a little biography about me, and I'm very excited to see what's next in my journey of Rick or Treat Horrorcast. And that's the show, so thank you again, Chris O'Brockie, very, very much. It was a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you. The feeling is absolutely mutual.
All right.
Thank you so much.
See y'all later, spookies.
Thanks for coming Rick or Treating. You can follow the show on Instagram at Rick or Treat Pod. It'd be a real scream if you'd take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. The show's spooky intro and outro music is a cover of Camille Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre, with orchestrations composed and performed by Lestat von Monlicht. Links to the artist's music can be found in the episode description. Check him out, he's frighteningly talented. Rick or Treat Horrorcast is independently produced by me, Ricky J. Duarte of Rick or Treat Productions. If you like what you heard, tell a friend. If you didn't, well, they're coming to get you, listener.